Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. From Philadelphia to San Francisco to college campuses everywhere, suddenly the American pro-life movement, and not just the pro-life movement, but really anybody who has even the mildest qualms about legal abortion, is under attack from the intolerant left, the newly energized and newly radical left. We have footage of the latest attack. It comes from the University of North Carolina. We'll show it to you just ahead. But first tonight, in related matters, one of the most bewildering things to watch over the past couple of years has been the steady migration of the American left from concern about civil liberties to an embrace of authoritarianism. It wasn't that long ago that liberals worried about powerful government agencies that might be stepping on somebody's rights. They had hearings on the subject. They don't anymore. They don't worry about it anymore. They applaud it instead. The left now controls government agencies. They understand that a permanent bureaucracy is a powerful tool of social control, and they know what's on their side. And that's why CNN is suddenly so invested in promoting creepy former bureaucrats like Clapper and Comey and Brennan. Why are they on the tube all the time? That's why. It's also why the news media became absolutely hysterical when Trump pointed out that the previous administration had spied on his presidential campaign, which they absolutely did. The press could not admit that. They had to be absolutely certain that you would never believe it.
President Trump has a new favorite word, and every time he uses it, he is lying. And that is the word spy.
His baseless claims of spies.
This is the President of the United States telling people don't believe what this federal government is doing, and that has very, very dangerous consequences.
The notion that somehow the FBI planted someone inside the campaign to spy on the campaign is just not true.
There's absolutely no evidence there was a spy. He wants you to believe that his campaign was spied on, and it's one of the worst things that we've ever seen from government.
Yeah, it's the governor's brother. They were all lying. The people who should have been telling you the truth were hiding the truth. They were acting as willing tools to the surveillance state. They should be ashamed of themselves, or of course not. Just last night, CNN held a town hall starring former FBI Director Jim Comey. It was a pure whitewash. Comey should have paid the network for shilling for him. Spying, Comey said? What an ugly word. Only the Russians spy on people. The FBI doesn't spy, it investigates.
The New York Times reported that the FBI sent an investigator posing as an assistant to meet with a Trump aide, George Papadopoulos, in 2016. Does that qualify as spying?
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on a particular investigative step because that's for the Bureau to do, and I'm not in the government any longer. But the FBI doesn't spy to begin with. The FBI investigates.
The FBI investigates. Okay, Jim. And yet moments later, after telling us, I'm not going to comment on current operations, Comey changed his mind. He said it was improper to comment specifically, but then he did. Why? Because he had to explain that investigating presidential campaigns is the most common thing in the world. Totally normal, in his words.
But sending an investigator undercover to meet with somebody who is connected to the campaign, they claimed he was later on just a coffee boy. That is an extreme step, no?
No, it's a reasonable... That was the guy, Papadopoulos, who was the subject of the information we got from the Australians, that he had talked to the Russians.
Did you sign off on the investigator going?
I don't remember talking about that particular step on my team. I knew they were trying to see if they could check it out. That's a totally normal step. See if you can get somebody close to the person and see if they'll confirm what we heard from the Australians.
Yeah, I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but it would be a totally normal step. Really, it would be bizarre if you didn't send secret agents to lie to staffers on a rival presidential campaign to say they would spill information while keeping the whole thing from their boss. It's totally normal. Does Comey think anyone believes that? Does he believe that? Of course he doesn't believe it. The Soviet Union didn't expect people to believe its propaganda, just to submit to it. Comey's from that school. Everyone knows it's terrifying that the Obama people sent spies on their political opponents. Jim Comey says it's normal, and CNN backs him up. So be quiet. If you don't agree with that, you're the enemy.
They start to make little compromises to stay on the team, echo his words, use the term spying, talk about collusion, or just be silent, thinking that's what I need to do to survive. And in the process, he has eaten their soul. They're lost.
So ignore the obvious. Agree with me or you have no soul. Who talks like that? The sort of person who will say or do absolutely anything for power. A scary person talks like that. Not long ago, Jim Comey is one of the most powerful men in the world. He could investigate you or anyone else at will. He could ruin lives if he wanted, and sometimes he did. How did a person like that ascend to a position of such authority in our government? What kind of system would promote a man like that? What kind of media would cover for him? Those are the questions we ought to be asking tonight. If there was one Jim Comey in the federal government, that means there are probably many others, and that should concern us. Eli Lake is Bloomberg opinion columnist, and he joins us tonight. Eli, thanks very much for coming on. So when you hear the former director of the FBI say it's totally conventional, what we do is totally normal to send not one, but two investigators into a rival campaign without telling the candidate, does that sound right?
No, it was a slippery answer, because what he was saying is that it's normal if we get a lead to investigate it. If no one would argue that, really. But the issue here is that not only was there a dangle, it appears, with some of these Trump campaign people, and that there were efforts to try to get them to acknowledge things with not one but two people who were, basically informing for the FBI or spying for the FBI. But once Trump wins the election, the existence of the counterintelligence probe is then leaked and becomes a political weapon. That becomes this cloud that hangs over the Trump presidency for more than its first 2 years. And that there is a clear-cut case of surveillance and intelligence abuse of power. And it's the one thing that, I'd like to see what Comey thinks of that, which is to say that how in the world did the New York Times get on literally, I think the night of the inauguration or the night before, the story of the existing counterintelligence investigation.
Which is not supposed to leak for good reason. I mean, if you have a case that a U.S. citizen has committed a crime, bring the case before a grand jury, indict him, show him guilty.
That's exactly right.
But leaking an investigation that hasn't proved anything.
Right, and that was only the first of several leaks, as we know, that were, either gleaned from sensitive surveillance, such as the Mike Flynn conversations with the Russian ambassador during the transition, or the existence of the FISA warrant, a surveillance warrant on Carter Page. Things like that, because Carter Page doesn't have a lawyer in that process, should never ever be leaked. There's a reason it's got to kind of be, we have to trust a secret court to approve it. It's for, in part, the protection of the individuals, but it's also for the integrity of the investigation itself. So if the press is getting these incredible, I as a journalist, if someone gave it to me, it's a hell of a story, but if you're getting that, you're also in some ways compromising the counterintelligence investigation. So all of it is a bit weird that Comey would say, oh, there's nothing to see here, it's totally normal, and it just seems that he's really just buffing his image at this point.
It does seem that, and thank you. I don't think of you as a partisan, I just needed some perspective on that because it was Orwellian. Eli Lake, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Michael Tracy is an independent journalist, he joins us tonight. Michael Tracy, if there's one thing as a journalist you want to be on guard against, it's overreach by secretive government agencies, right? I mean, shouldn't we be deeply skeptical always, no matter what your politics, of FBI spying or CIA spying or NSA spying on American citizens?
I think it's just so crucial to underscore that the actions we already know that the FBI and to some extent the CIA, perhaps even the NSA, undertook all constituted a massive encroachment by these federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies into the domestic political affairs of the United States. And if that was so very normal, as James Comey insists, can he please provide a precedent in U.S. history where something akin to that took place? Because I've looked and I haven't found it, and the term normalcy implies that this is just sort of like a routine event, right? And one thing that I try to implore to my progressive friends who tend to brush this issue aside and don't particularly care about it is, okay, so are you telling me that if the Trump administration were to send a spy or even a series of spies to, I don't know, go and try to entrap a campaign official associated with the Bernie Sanders campaign, are you saying you'll just be content with that and you just won't pay it much mind? I don't think so, but that's the kind of thing that happens when this occurs with rival candidates that you don't like. A precedent gets enshrined that then can be used for other purposes down the road.
Exactly. And I just want to be absolutely clear on this point because I think it's a central point. Comey says this is totally normal. You have looked, and this thought occurred to me today, but I ran out of time. But you've actually run it down. There is no precedent for this in modern American history.
Well, look, I mean, the FBI and the CIA are very secretive institutions, so there might be something that I personally didn't come across, which sheds light on whether something like this happened, I don't know, in the Truman administration or something. But I'm not aware of it. Please, if you're out there, let me know, because I want to hear about it. The thing is, all the craziness around this issue and the Democrats failing to even evince a scintilla of curiosity about it is all because they're just trying to continue the collusion conspiracy by another name. That's why they were freaking out about Bill Barr. That's why they don't want to acknowledge the impending IG report from the Department of Justice. They're in this wormhole that they've been psychologically and professionally invested in for years, and they can't extricate themselves from it, and it's really sad and pathetic to watch.
And it's hurting so many institutions that we're going to need when the Trump era is over, I would argue. Michael Tracy, thank you for that perspective. So this era will end at a certain point. The FBI will still exist. At that point, it'll be clear what kind of damage Jim Comey's conduct has done to that institution. We'd like to get some sense of it now. We're joined by former FBI Deputy Assistant Director Danny Coulson. Mr. Coulson, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
As someone who devoted a lot of his life to the FBI, how do you feel watching the former director behave like that on television?
It's absolutely disgusting. I was only there for 31 years, so I have some sense of the FBI and currently. To see him say this is normal, this is not normal. There are certain guidelines and principles that we follow. You have to have a preliminary investigation and then a full investigation. But the real problem here, Tucker, is that this case didn't start with an FBI field office. It started basically on the 7th floor of the FBI. And when it's done by a field office like Iran-Contra or like Watergate, you have checks and balances at the very bottom level. And these cases will never get to headquarters. A good commander, and I was a commander for a long time, and this came across my desk, especially the FISA application, I would have done that about 5 minutes. We're not approving this. It's unverified. It's salacious. And I think the question is here, if it was, and Comey knew it was, why would we have the audacity to walk that to the FISA court and give it as something that we would be the basis for taking over a Fourth Amendment issue and getting a search warrant? So it's not common. It's aggravating to those of us who are there. I still do a lot of work for the FBI. They're all thinking, where did these guys go to our academy? Don't you know the rules here? And clearly they did and ignored them. And I think that's what really upsets us all.
Well, yeah, I mean, what a tragedy for people who are serving the FBI, special agents serving there right now, who are watching their integrity impugned by this lunatic.
Absolutely, and I think, remember this, we take a lot of pride in credibility.
Yes.
People talk to us because of our credibility and our ability to follow the law and to follow the Constitution, and these guys just jumped right over it. And it's maybe this is too strong, but I want to say it. It's disgusting to see what the director of the FBI now says. Also, this is troubling, that the head lawyer for the FBI finds no problem with what happened even now. In retrospect, he doesn't have a problem with it. So I think that tells the mentality of the people under James Comey's watch on the 7th floor.
It's distressing. I agree completely. Mr. Coulson, thank you very much.
No, thank you, Tiger. It's always a pleasure.
A pro-life campus activist assaulted on video by the left for her views. That's next after the break.